Hello, hello everyone. Welcome to the Future Proof Organization panel. My name is Mariano Gomide de Faria. I am the Director of Program of EICOM, the European Institute for Commerce Management in Cambridge, and I'm also the founder of VTEX. And I'm going to be one of the executives that will be with you in this panel. Please introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Mariah Chase. I'm the CEO of Eloquii. Eloquii is a digitally native, vertically integrated brand that serves women sizes 14 to 28. We were originally, sorry, I'm trying to get my camera correct so you guys aren't getting the glare. Eloquii was originally a venture-backed startup that launched in 2014. And we were acquired by Walmart in late 2018. So today we sit among the brands that Walmart serves its customers. And we have created a diffusion brand for them called Eloquii Elements in addition to Eloquii. So passionate about all things digital and commerce.
Linda.
And hi, I am Linda Lee. I am the head of e-commerce for H&M in the Americas. So H&M, I think most of you probably know, it is a global fashion retailer. And then within the Americas, we have e-commerce live within the US, Canada, and Mexico. And then prior to H&M, I was at Bath & Body Works, and then before that at BCG, a consulting firm. So very interested in consumer behavior, why consumers are loyal to certain brands and why they are not, and then overall just digital growth as well as e-commerce growth.
Hi, my name is Dan Goldman. I would say my passion area is the intersection of consumer psychology and growth strategy. And really, how do you help brands build a deeper emotional connection with their consumers that lead to the long-term sustained growth that we all want to see? I'm currently head of strategy at the Gap Inc., where I work across our portfolio of brands. Part of that, I led strategy at the North Face, and before that, had different experiences in consulting at McKinsey and Kurt Salmon, and brand management at Procter & Gamble. Super excited to be here and have this conversation.
Thank you all. So how it works, the Future Proof Organizations Roundtable, each one of us will make questions for the others, and we're gonna discuss for 15 minutes each topic, and hope that you enjoy. And it is a very heavyweight kind of caliber people and executives that we have in the table, and we hope that this discussion would bring you the knowledge and the clarifications that you need to be future proof. So I will start with the topic that I think it's very like maybe the most important topic at all, the talent and the talent acquisition for all the digital commerce companies. So in 2017, Scott Anthony, a Harvard Business School professor and partner from the Huron Group, came up with an article about how longevity in the S&P 500 is shrinking. He claimed that at its current pace, about half of the current list is expected to drop out within the next decade. The article made a strong point for the development of disruptive innovation, and naturally a pillar for the innovation lies on a company's capacity to attract and retain the talents, the digital talents, specifically the native digital talents, the young ones, the ones that have experience and the strength to change things, to transform things. So my first question to all of the speakers here is, how can the fashion brands compete for digital talents once we have all the tech companies, all the CPG companies, all the, like, everyone are fighting for the same talents? How the fashion brands compete to be in the first option for the native digital talents? Please, anyone want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll jump in. It was interesting, Mariano, when I was reading that study, it was such a clear indication of how much capital has distorted into venture. The fact that now so many venture-backed startups are actually going to the public markets as as a way to raise equity. And I think as that distortion continues, we'll continue to see that turnover. So that was like the first thing. And then with regards to competing for digital talents, I actually think of this a little bit in the inverse, which is what happens to the talents that aren't digital, right? Like what happens, because in theory, the generations that we're hiring now that are coming out of school, graduate school, even for the past 5 to 10 years, they are native digital. They've grown up with, tablets, phones, things that, not to give away my age, were certainly not a part of my childhood. And so I think there's the engineering, data science talents that are always, at Eloquii, we just expect that there's going to be a faster rate of turn. And I think for those specific functions, you've got to be very aggressive and competitive on compensation. And you have to budget for it because it is what it is. And then I think there's got to be an expectation that there's a lot of competition, and you've got to bake that into how you're thinking about your planning. But then on the flip side, I also think that most professionals starting out in their professional journeys today, and again for the past maybe 5, maybe 10 years, they are digitally native. And so I wonder about the colleagues and the associates who aren't, and how they are learning and getting up to speed, which is a different way to think about it.
Mariah, I think it's a great point. I think clearly the hiring profile of retailers has changed to be more digitally native, more analytical. And I'll talk a minute about how I think we can compete against some of the tech players. But I also think, to your point, what's even more important is a lot of fashion, a lot of retail is art and science, and the combination of the two is really the power. And there's a role for left brain people, right brain people, but the magic happens when not only do they come together, but can really share and communicate and co-create. And I think in addition to the hiring, that culture change needs to happen. From a hiring standpoint, while the hiring profile, Mariano, is changing, as you pointed out, I also think in a lot of cases, Gen Z and younger millennials, their selection criteria of what types of jobs they're looking for and what work means to them is changing. I think taking that into consideration is hugely important. There's recent articles came out, I don't know, a couple months ago about Goldman Sachs. And historically, if you think about, when I was coming out of college, most people chose their profession based on, or the job based on the money and the prestige of the firm. And from a money standpoint and prestige, it's hard to beat Goldman Sachs. But the article was talking about how job satisfaction of analysts was like at an all-time low, 2 out of 10, and most said they were going to quit within 6 months if something hadn't changed. And I do think you see a huge pivot away from people choosing jobs solely based on income and prestige, really thinking about, does the company align with my personal values? Does it fulfill me in more ways? Are there opportunities to make an impact? Are there opportunities to progress and learn and develop? And is the work-life balance the right mix for me? So I do think, what's great about fashion brands and, retail in general is there's a high impact industry. You can see the fruits of your labor, but also more and more kind of brands are pivoting to be really purpose-led, values-driven, and that really aligns with a lot of people's personal moral compasses, and it's an inspiring place for people to work.
Yeah,
I completely agree with that. I think it's funny to have this question because I had a recent conversation with somebody who had just gotten an offer. This was somebody just out of college, I think, 1 year in the workforce, had just gotten an offer at a fashion retailer, was at PayPal at the time, and was asking me, should I take this offer and why would I want to do this? And legitimately, she said to me, I've never thought about myself working in retail. I've never thought about myself working in fashion. A lot of my friends, a lot of my peers, we work in the tech space, or we want to do consulting, we want to do iBanking. And you know, I think it speaks a lot to kind of what you guys have spoken to in terms of what a lot of generations have kind of gotten used to when it comes to like the prestige of certain industries. And so I do think that it's important for the fashion retail industry to address this kind of like, I guess, misalignment in whether it is a prestigious place to work, but then also what it means when it comes to career and what your career is meant to kind of give you on a daily basis. I think, Dan, you're absolutely right that now I think a lot of us can kind of speak to the fact that our companies believe in something, really have kind of a values-driven environment that potentially they might not find at some other companies. But I also do think that another main thing is kind of talking about what a digital career can give you. And a digital career within a fashion retailer means so many different things. You know, it could mean working in product. It could mean working in e-commerce. It could mean working in customer analytics and insights. So many positions where I think, again, the beauty of it, like you said, Dan, is that marriage between quant and creative, which I think does speak to a lot of people these days. But again, I think a lot of it is the need for the industry to show we have these career paths for you. We have the ability for you to grow and evolve in our industry, not just in one track necessarily, but if you have the digital competence for you to be able to keep growing and developing, and at the end of the day, getting promoted, compensated, and so forth.
One of the biggest challenge I am seeing the field with the clients that are around us, it is that in the marketing, for example, you need to hire developers or statisticians or mathematicians. And how do you announce, how do you promote the vacant? Oh, this is a digital marketing specialist, or I need a mathematician for marketing. So the way you create the environment around the storytelling, and the thing that I would like to recommend all the audience, and by the way, it's an incredible audience that we are having for this webinar. My recommendation is create programs. I told yesterday a CEO of a big fashion retailer that he was struggling to hire the young ones, and I say, you are announcing like a marketing position. Announce that you are hiring for being a digital commerce specialist. And he told me, I don't have this role. And I said, you have. Inside all your company, you have digital commerce specialists. So announce the end game, not the mid game. And he bought the idea. And I am seeing these being very successful in other companies. So you should announce the program to embrace the young ones into a journey of knowledge, not only at the final role that he will end up in the company. So that's the thing I'm seeing, the few that pop-ups, and I would like to give the people here these translated knowledge to apply. Any final comments on this topic? Anyone?
I think just to, Dan, what you and Linda both said is resonating in terms of, you know, whenever I'm interviewing or talking to really an engineer specifically and sort of saying like, why did you get into this? What do you love? What is your like, what would you do for free? There's a part of your job that you do that you actually get paid for, which is usually the part you don't like. What would you do for free? And the answer is always, I love to solve big problems, right? I want to solve really interesting problems and create solutions. And I think it is for fashion, which, you know, has oftentimes been thought of as like a slightly archaic business or archaic field. It's really about marketing, the ability and the impact. I think, Dan, you said this is a direct impact that an engineer or a data scientist or, you know, Mariano, to your point, a digital commerce specialist actually can have on the business and sort of the agency and freedom they'll have to create solutions. Whereas maybe at a Google, they wouldn't have that much freedom or that agency. I don't know. I don't work for Google, but I think being able to, it's a lot in the narrative and it's a lot in the marketing of the way that you're talking about it and presenting it.
Yeah. Right, I totally agree. And I think what's so unique about the consumer industry, for me, and I think for a lot of people, is it's just a really fun collaborative industry where the benefit of your work is the world gets to see it. And sometimes when B2B businesses, your friends, your neighbors, they don't get to see kind of the fruits of your labor. And here it really comes to life in front of your eyes, but kind of the eyes of all your friends. And you can really talk about the impact you're having.
So one last comment on that, I was asking here, there is an exam from EICOM, that's the cmcexam.com. So it's an exam that certifies the knowledge of e-commerce. And I am recommending all the companies that embrace a kind of a standards of knowledge, because right now, after COVID, the demand for such a talent is so big that actually we don't know who are the ones that knows or the ones that just knows, right? So we need to have some standards to see who are to guide the universities to teach the topics of digital commerce from the college, from the university, not only allowing these to be learned from the professional life. But I think it's we have our timeout for this question, and now we are going to Linda for the next question. Please, Linda.
Okay, so the next question is, the pandemic has had severe consequences to all business verticals, and we're all very aware of how deeply profound the changes felt in the fashion business are. Consumers are now spending more time than ever before engaged with social media, videos, and online texting. And at the same time, some American brands like American Eagle, Madewell, and Bonobos are reporting a return of customer traffic, and in some cases, even an increase in sales to pre-pandemic levels. What are the main learnings that have come from 2020 and so far to date, 2021 as well? And how should the fashion industry better respond to this shift in customer behavior?
I can jump in. My first reaction to this question is, fashion industry are really good to curate the thoughts from the product to the audience. And I do believe the post-COVID, the customers should be addressed from the customer side to the product audience. So it's in the opposite way. I mean, the customer service is the new marketing. So my big learning from 2020 is that the companies that were really, really well established in the customer service, how simple it is to engage and to deal with the company into the customer service, are the companies that are creating more loyalty to the program, to the brand. So my main learn was that you should treat the customer service as a marketing thing, as a line below marketing, not as operation. That's my big takeaway from 2020.
Yeah, I personally agree with you. I think the more consumer centric you can be, the more responsive and meeting your consumer needs. But the two biggest learnings I had from 2020, and I think kind of apply going forward, is one, the importance of agility, and two, the importance of digitization. I think when you think about agility, a lot of retailers and fashion companies have a trade-off between scale and agility. It's hard to do both really well. I think what 2020 proved in just the pace of change in the industry is the agility is going to be really critical for evolving and changing and innovating going forward. And that has, implications across your whole go-to-market process, from how you produce products to how you think about inventory holding to really how you engage with consumers, Mariano, and can respond to that customer service and that engagement. And then on the digitization, that's obviously a tool to drive the agility, but it's not just digitizing the front of the house in terms of the consumer experience, the omnichannel, but it's also the back of the house in terms of your operating model. How you think about digital product creation, how you think about digital samples, to even digitizing kind of the way you work in the meetings. And I think really going forward, retailers. I think COVID was a big jumpstart in terms of driving some of that agility, driving some of that digitization, but it definitely can't stop here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dan, I hear you on the agility. I mean, I can speak only for myself, but I was kind of blown away at how quickly we were able to move. And necessity is the mother of invention, and that certainly was true. Unfortunate that COVID was the reason that it happened, but nevertheless, it happened. I think that the tension, the interesting tension point for me in 2020 was that, so wherever you were on the stairs on like the steps of your personal customer digital journey, you leapt about 4 steps up. Like you just, like, if you were comfortable buying clothing, but you would never buy food online, now all of a sudden you're buying broccoli online. So people just made these really step function leaps in their own personal customer digital journeys. And then so we all spent more time on social media. We were all, we've all been doing the Zoom workout classes or what have you. And then on the flip side, we all realized, like, humans are innately social animals. And so stores are still important, but they're different, right? There are going to be less of them, and they're going to be different. Some of them will be, what do they call them? Dark stores, just fulfillment centers. But then I think it will be interesting to finally really see what social commerce looks like. And fashion is certainly, I think, potentially, if not the first, one of the first verticals where it makes a tremendous amount of sense. And we're seeing it in live streams on TikTok, YouTube, really Instagram, certainly Instagram, being able to shop from content in a way that was never possible before. And I still think there's a lot of advancements that can be made to make it more seamless for the customer. But it was this, like, we're more digital, but we want more social engagement and human interaction, which is it's an interesting needle to thread. In a lot of ways, it's a hard needle to thread because they're opposing.
Totally agree. I think for me, agility, absolutely. Agility and flexibility, and truly being able to meet the customer where she or he is. And gosh, the importance of supply chain, and obviously the importance of the agile and flexible supply chain. I think it's also interesting to kind of think about how, at the end of the day, we realized that there were so many aspects of our overall infrastructure as well. I mean, you guys remember, in the thick of 2020, USPS not being able to deliver packages anymore because it was just so backlogged. And that happened across so many industries, so many pieces of our kind of natural infrastructure. And again, I think that kind of made a lot of companies realize, and a lot of, fashion retailers especially realize, just because we're so kind of, again, like a tangible business that meets the customer directly, just like how important it is to be able to be present and leverage all your different touch points and channels so that you can meet the customer in whatever way you can. Because if USPS is delayed by 10 days, it's not going to be a great customer experience that way. But how on earth then can you react in a different way to still be able to give your customer a good customer experience?
Yeah, there are 2 cases that I love. One is the Mini Pri, is a Romanian case. Amazing. It is a very big fashion group in Romania. And when came the lockdown, the owner chose to launch by a marketplace, the Mini Pri market. And it is just a pure fashion company. And why the owner chose to launch a market? Because they know that they have the clients online and they could serve the clients with basic foods and medicines. So in 1 week, literally 9 days, they came from zero to a marketplace of drugstores and markets, allowing the fashion store to become a gateway to basic elements. They didn't put like the entire source of products from grocery, but they put like a milk, bread, the things that people would need, and they do it because they want to serve the society. But at the end of the day, they collect millions of new customers and end up as a good strategy. The second case is it's a big shoes company that, because of the supply chain that Mariah mentioned, it was a chaotic supply chain for shoes mainly, right? Because all the Asians break down on logistics. That company suddenly starts to do cross-border with the fulfillments. So one country, they connected the fulfillments between each other, and one country could serve another country through cross-border operations. And this is something that we always think that could be in the future, but with the necessity, people just do it. And I'm saying in the classes of Econ something that's a crazy idea. It's as far as a COVID to a great idea. So this is, I think, now the companies will be more open to crazy ideas because they saw it happen, they saw it working. I do believe the change of the mindset of the management and the stakeholders and the shareholders in the way how they innovate, it also will be one of the legacy of 2020.
Mariano, I completely agree in terms of the notion around innovation and continue to think about the evolving business model, whether it's the social commerce that Mariah was talking about, partnerships and ecosystems, or marketplaces per your conversation. But at the same time, I go back to what Mariah said in terms of, well, the customer journey has fundamentally changed. The role of the store and the physical kind of connection that we have with consumers, that's not going away. It's changing. And I do think that there is going to be a thirst for consumers to come back to physical environments. And those environments also need to innovate. You know, online has historically been a great replenishment channel. In store, it's much more about brand experience, trial awareness. And I think the thing that will add on there is really the community aspect, which can happen digitally. But I think there will be a thirst coming out of COVID for more physical community interaction.
Great. Any more comments, Linda, Mariah? Let's move to the next question.
All right. So next question is about the clusterization of digital commerce. So where brands create specific sales channels specific to target audiences. It's one of the many manifestations of guerrilla marketing, initiatives such as websites targeted at professionals, i.e. Colgate's website for dentists, websites with limited access, much like clubs or VIP lists or exclusive drops. There's some of the projects that are popping up on a daily basis. So how can a brand incorporate these new sales tactics? And how does a brand know if it's right for them? Do each of you think the clusterization of commerce is a vector for strengthening your brand? Or does it weaken it by kind of, as a derivative, sub-brands, too many niches, and it takes away from the core?
I will give two examples, and to bring more things to discuss. I was living in the UK for the last 6 years, and I wanted the fresh milk. That's very tradition in the British society, right? The fresh milk. And I was looking in the web stores of the big retailers, Sainsbury's, Ocado, to have like fresh milk, and I couldn't find. And then I pop up with something that they call the Milk and More. The website back there 4 years ago has only one SKU, milk. Only one. So there's no PLP, there's no search, there's nothing, because there's only one SKU. And I say, oh my God, if they just sell that thing, they must be really good on that. So obviously, I chose that website to be my milk provider. And suddenly the milk that are delivering to me 3 times a week started to messaging me, say, look, do you want some butter? Do you want some bread? I already have your credit card, so I can take for you. And I said, yes, for sure, because I do have more money than time. And I do believe society has more money than time. So this clusterizations, I do believe, is the next wave. The question is, and I don't know the answer, is it will jeopardize the brands? The brands making gorillas can afford to have a sub brands to those gorillas, or those gorillas are a brand by itself? I don't know the answer, but I know that gorillas will be there to deliver more cluster offer for the audience.
Mariano, I'd argue that trend's been accelerating for the last 20 years. If you look at like emerging brands in really going after and hyper targeting different, whether tribes or subsets of consumers, and what it's led to is an explosion of choice for the consumer. You think about it, like there used to be, you go in a supermarket, there was one bottle of ketchup. Now there's 20 or 30 different options. There used to be like 2 different gym and fitness concepts. Now there's 100. You think about, like in the US, there used to be 3 or 4 big jean companies. Now you can buy jeans from hundreds of companies. And I think historically the challenge for large mainstream brands is by trying to be everything to everybody, you end up being nothing to nobody. And I think, brands now have the ability to kind of, where they never did before, really think about hyper targeting because there's more access to data. So you actually understand and have a better picture of who your consumer is before they walk into your store. You can connect with them one-on-one. You can create more personal experiences that are gated and separate. But I still believe for big brands to do this, you've got to do it in a way that's consistent, in a way that it doesn't compromise your brand DNA and what you stand for, even as you deliver slightly different experiences, stays true to who you are.
Yeah. Facebook is the king of guerrillas approach, right? So Instagram, if you like, it's incredible how they match and do the guerrilla, and hundreds of millions are falling for that very specific offer. I was one of them. I moved to Scarsdale. Scarsdale is all about tennis, right? All my friends here play tennis, and I don't. So I say I need to play tennis, but I didn't have anything. So I bought the racket, and then I jump in Zappos to buy the tennis, the shoes for tennis. And then I searched 234 SKUs available. And I didn't know anything. I don't know anything about tennis. So I was struggling, say, oh, what should I buy? And then I see in the second location on Google, a web store that say top 10 shoes for tennis. And I say, oh my God, that's going to be easier to me. I have 10 options. And then I enter in this web store and I bought from there. So I prefer to buy from something that I don't know the reputation instead of spending my time to search for the real or specific thing. So that was a big example for me. And I say, okay, this is happening. The clusterization is driving traffic, organic traffic. That's the secret, right? And Eloquii has a good example of a clusterization by default, right? So it is a good example to explore as well. Linda, any other cases from your side that you remember that clusterization drives traffic?
I mean, I would say, connected to what Dan mentioned, I think that in some ways this has been happening for a while as our data capabilities have gotten stronger as fashion retailers and so forth, in that the more data you have, the more specific and personalized you can make every single experience. And so in many ways, if you look at kind of the messaging across platforms or across media channels or across, loyalty accounts or whatever it is, I mean, my shopping experience can and will look entirely different from your shopping experience. And I think especially, kind of as what we talked about with the first question, like how do we how do we attract kind of a younger generation of talent, but also of shoppers? So much of that has to come down to, you want your messaging and your branding and your marketing to be as relevant and as kind of targeted and generationally specific as it should be. And so all of a sudden you're playing in very kind of like unique ways across different platforms and across different channels and whatnot. I think though, Dan, what you had mentioned at the very end, and it probably is, we both work for big companies, and so we're probably struggling with similar things, is how are you able to deliver those personalized and super hyper relevant messages and experiences, but still maintain that clear brand DNA? At times, you may have certain segments of customers that don't actually have anything to do with other segments of customers, and you don't want to ostracize any particular group of customers. So how is it that you maintain that kind of clear brand DNA? That is, I think, at the end of the day, what I struggle with when it comes to this question.
I think it's also interesting. So Mariano, I hear you on the Eloquii could be considered an example of clusterization, in the sense that that a lot of people consider us niche. The flip side is that the customer we serve is the majority of women in the U.S. She just wasn't focused on and known about for a really long time. So she's actually, women's sizes 14 and up are about comprise about two-thirds of women in the U.S. above the age of 18. But she hadn't been addressed before. Right. So kind of whether it's a niche market or it's not a niche market, we decided to address her in a different way. This conversation is making me think of shoes, because for the past several years in the startup community, you've seen these sort of like mono shoe brands launch, whether it's Allbirds, Rothy's, Birdies. There are a couple of greats, a couple of others that I'm forgetting, but all they do is sell basically one type of shoe over and over and over, and then they start to maybe slightly expand the offering. But that, I also wonder, like, how big do those brands get? Because Nike started with a shoe, right? And then now Nike's Nike. So like, does it start in clusterization, and then by the nature of the fact that everyone's got sales targets, everyone is expected to grow a certain amount and really be a huge player? I mean, that's the American way. Where's the imposition of order on that merchandising assortment, on that target audience? I think time will tell.
Mariah, something you said, hit home with me, because I think if you look at historically, like how marketing has been taught is pick one target, focus on it, and do it really well. I think the challenge with that, if at certain point you reach scale, and you're kind of limited. And I think if you look at a lot of direct-to-consumer brands that have started, at least in the U.S., they've seen tremendous growth going after kind of a sub-segment of consumers, and then hit a natural kind of top. And it's only by kind of broadening your base and kind of expanding kind of what you stand for that you can attract other kind of sub-clusters of consumers. And I do think if you look at Nike and a lot of the other kind of multi-billion-dollar brands, they are able to appeal to different clusters of consumers while still standing for the same thing. But they've pivoted from being kind of very functional specific to really connecting on a much more emotional level that has a broader halo. And so to be a Nike consumer, you don't have to be a hardcore athlete. To be a North Face consumer, you don't have to be a hardcore climber, but there's kind of an aspirational lifestyle angle that pulls you in. And then there's subsets of consumer products that are appropriate to you.
Right. And they, in order to appeal to those different target audiences, your assortment usually has to grow a lot. Yeah. So Mariano, when you were living in England and you were getting that milk, like who knows what that milk company is offering now? They might also be offering, like, I don't know, during the pandemic, maybe they offer toilet paper. I don't know. It seemed like that was the hot thing to offer. But So I think it's
Yeah,
kind of like thinking about clusterization TBD where a brand or a retailer is on its growth journey.
yeah. And there's another aspect of clusterization that's quite interesting. There's a company that are implementing a new project to clusterize the support. What it means, when someone from Texas open a ticket or call, the call will be routed to the stores, the physical stores in that specific region. So people from the region will support the customers from the specific region. And there are two gains on that, right? We take over the OSHA's time of the physical stores because the peak of the online customer service is the opposite of the physical stores visiting. So we can use the OSHA's time of the sales guys to support our customers. And the second one is to test how intimacy will generate sales push by bringing the Texas guy to support the Texas guy, the Seattle guy to support the Seattle guy, the Midwest to be supported by Midwestern. So a lot of things are happening in the world right now in direction of custom clusterization. 99% in marketing, but I would like to bring the attention that we have also in logistics and customer service some experience on that, and I would embrace every single bet on that because there is a big gap in the market for this, and I am very curious to see how this project will end up.
The one other gap I talked about is like how you think about clusterization in terms of making sure that it's more than one dimensional. I think historically, a lot of clusterization, from a digital marketing standpoint, has been done based on kind of the prior behavior. And so based on what you bought before, we're going to feed you information about similar type products. Like Amazon, if you're on Amazon, it always feeds you almost like the exact same stuff you bought last time, which sometimes is helpful and sometimes it's like, I don't need another one of those. But I think you need to combine it with the kind of the psychographic as well, so you can understand kind of what's the underlying motivation, plus where are they in their journey with you. And if you can combine those two, it can be really powerful in terms of meeting them where they are.
And then I think the other piece of it is, like this question is around, do we think clusterization will strengthen the brand, or will it kind of just weaken it because there will be these sub brands? I think in some ways also, we see how intent consumers and customers are, but also especially the younger generations when it comes to really kind of leaning into a community, really leaning into a tight, small community of individuals who they believe are like them, share their values, and so forth. So I think there is also an element of, in some ways, I'm not sure. I don't think there's a way to get away from clusterization. I don't think I don't think we will. I think the reality will be that there will be a drive for community in general, and I think it ties a little bit to what we talked at the beginning around. This year has probably taught us how social we are as beings and how we want to belong to something.
Yes.
And I think that is playing out more and more in the way that consumers consume as well.
Yep. Yeah, fully agree. You can see the phenomenon of Chrome Hearts. The brand, the luxury brand Chrome Hearts, very niched, exploding in sales. And because they came from a content perspective to product and creating the storytelling by embracing a community, and they are almost untouchable, right? Is the untouchable piece of the market, and this is interesting how the big brands will embrace this guerrilla. I do think we don't have the answer yet. I don't think anyone has the answer yet. So next 1, 2, 3 years, the answers will pop up, right? Because if you see the timeline, people were with their own brands. Now there's the thing that, every brand should be a marketplace with more assortment. And now with more assortment, we have the guerrilla of being, no, now I am an opinionated web store with less assortment. So then we are in between of a lot of thesis, and it's quite challenging to face, oh, but I have a brand. My brand has value. And it's not about assortment, it's not about guerrillas. And this is gonna be fun. This is gonna be this is where the truth will emerge in the next 2-3 years, and a lot of the brands that we see today, I do believe, will be lost because the lack of ability to deal with these tiny nuances in the market. Okay, so let's move to the last question, if you agree, guys. Dan, please.
Sure. The last question's regarding social responsibility. It's customers are demanding an ever-increasing level of social engagement and responsibility from brands. What's the role and responsibility of brands with regards to social responsibility, and how do you think fashion industry should respond to this moment of vulnerability coming out of COVID and with some of the other conditions going on in the United States right now, in the world around us? And Mariah or Linda, one of you guys want to lead us off?
This is a big one. Ending on a high note here. We've had a lot of conversation about social responsibility, social justice at Eloquii, certainly over the past year. And I think one of the biggest lessons that I've had is taking care of your house first and then worrying about the outside. So stop. And I say this is hard for me to do. Stop caring what others think of you, even some of your customers and some of your social media followers. Like, take a hard line and really focus on where your associates are at, what they need. Put your resources and your time, your effort, and sometimes your dollars there first. Because if that's not, you're not taking care of that, it literally does not matter at all what you're doing from an external perspective. So and I think that's hard, even more so because we see now that social justice issues play out on social media, right? Whereas, with being fashion brands before, your social media channel was primarily a place for you to engage with fans, users, show content, offer exclusives, potentially allow followers to shop. And now it's a place where you tell the world what you think about the world. And if you had told me as a fashion brand CEO 5 years ago that was going to be a significant part of our external social media communications, I would have said, what parallel universe do you live in? And then they would have been like, 2020, it's coming. Get ready for the future. And you won't believe it. And literally didn't believe it. And then I think lastly, understanding for the brand that you're at, where your brand stands on doing good in the world versus making a difference or quote unquote being political. And I think that's, you want to do good, and then you really have to understand if you're actually going to take a step and be political when it might alienate your team, it might alienate customers. And so those have been some of the thought processes, the thought exercises that have certainly been a part of the last year for me. Not a lot. What about you? Like a lot of questions, not a lot of answers.
Yeah, I think I'm probably in the same boat there. I think I think it's very interesting. Probably look at us as and many brands maybe 5-10 years ago, and I would imagine, and I know the stance was a little bit more like, don't commit too much either way because you don't want to alienate any possible customer. And now I think it is very different, where I think that brands, I think it's quite clear brands need to, and they should, take that hard line, take that hard stance, kind of decide what they stand for, and communicate that. And I think it's for several reasons. I think one is that at the end of the day, the brands own a lot of kind of like the voices and the messages that are going to our consumers. Like we take up a lot of the advertising space that's out there in the world, and we should use that platform then for something that we believe in and that we think can make a difference. I think another reason is what we talked about at the beginning, which is that probably one of the most important things for any of our futures is our talent. That is our biggest asset, and our talent cares. Our talent cares about what stand we take or what we believe in, and in order to make sure that they feel like they're working at a company that they should be loyal to and that they should truly believe in, that we need to have that kind of mindset. And then I think it also, when it comes to social responsibility, there's obviously a lot of kinds of social responsibility that we can have. And I think, thinking about like fashion retail, for instance, we are, we own a lot of parts of the supply chain. We own a lot of parts of production, of parts of the world that are, are not so privileged as others. And I think that is where, again, kind of just seeing where we are, what we have the ability to influence. Again, I think it is, I do think it's truly our responsibility to take some action, because we can. And there aren't that many brands and there aren't that many people out there in the world that can. And so I think if you have the ability to, you need to.
Yeah, I completely agree with kind of both of what you're saying. I think one of the interesting things is the connection back to the battle for employees and the battle for consumers. I think a lot of, at least the publicly traded companies out there, have realized that they can't just look at one stakeholder in the investor community. They've got to look at all stakeholders and think about kind of what role each one plays, and make sure they're delivering a value proposition that is right for all of them. And I do think it really starts with having a clearly defined purpose and values. And I think Mariah said this, but it's about, you have to do first before you speak. It's not about marketing. It's about actually bringing to life kind of the organization internally, the actions that you spoke to throughout your supply chain, and then you can talk about it and broadcast it to the world. But I think very quickly, if you're talking before you're actually living it, consumers see through that, other stakeholders see, right, your employees see through that, and you can cause yourself a lot of damage.
Yeah, and there's the conflict as well, Dan. If you do good, should you tell or not? If you tell, people would say, no, you just did good because you want to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't tell, people would say, why are not telling? You are not inspiring others. So at the end of the day, I end up with these in Brazil. I donate a big amount of money to a hospital that in the peak of COVID crisis was without ER rooms. So we donate to build, and I donate for the ones that would build directly. So I knew that the money would go for the right place. And I didn't tell anyone, just my wife and Geraldo, the other founder of VTEX, that knew about it. And one of the VPs of VTEX, after 6 months that happened, we are talking about it and say, why you didn't tell us? We would join you. And then I say, yes, because it's so difficult to talk about social responsibility by being a business with a profit purpose. People make a misunderstand how you can, although you seek profit, you can also be responsible. You can also act in defense of the diversity creation and the topics that you step or stand for. So it is a big challenge. It's a big challenge. Um, I do think we are overshooting the reaction for the way people filter social responsibility, and I do think will pop up standards how a company can embrace social responsibility in a way that society will fully understand. It already happened in the past with other topics, and I do believe the society learned after COVID that we cannot rely only in government anymore, and that brings the companies, the big corporations. Four companies here are big. We can do things better to the society, and we should. We deserve them. And I do believe companies are a little bit shy because of the reaction, but I am seeing that one and then another one will take the lead, and we will see this volume of social actions to be much more active in the market. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think something you said, Mariano, really resonates, which is that that you know, for so many generations, at least in the United States, um, the federal and then the state and local governments really held the agency and the elected power and the fiscal budgets, et cetera, to deliver change on behalf of their constituents, right? Or not deliver change, TBD. And I would actually say that this is another trend that COVID, sort of put some rocket fuel under, but has been brewing for a long time. Like that, Dan, what you mentioned, the Business Roundtable, where I think it was in 2018 or 2019, where they said, okay, we're no longer going to just serve shareholders, but we're going to serve customers, shareholders, and associates. And I think the order was first associates, then customers, and then shareholders. So I think that this has been brewing for some time, the idea that the private sector, not just brands, but the private sector has a bigger responsibility for future generations, really future generations, and to extrapolate the earth and like the land that the future generations will inherit, quite literally. And I think that's what I mean when I say, doing good, right? Like, I think that's really about, it's empowering and inspiring to see the private sector step up and say, yeah, we think there's a gap. We're going to fill the gap. We're going to try to fill the gap. And we're going to put even more pressure on state, local, federal governments because the customers are putting it on us. Right. So I think it's actually it's like an upwardly mobile sort of, I won't call it a revolution, but it sometimes feels a little bit like a revolution.
Yeah, sometimes it feels. I must be the one to call for the last comments. Just to thank our partners, the ones that are putting together this, EICOM, the European Institute for Commerce Management, and Institute from Latin America, and our sponsors, VTEX, SoftBank, Pivot3, and AWS. Thank you very much for putting this together. And so from Mariah, Linda, and Dan, in this order, your last message. If you want the people that are in the audience to say and to remember one thing, what would be this one thing?
Take care of your house first. That is the one thing. You are nothing without your team and your culture. Whether you're digital, whether you're analog, it doesn't matter. It is a lesson that I learn multiple times a day.
Linda.
And I would say, as exhibited by this talk, which, wow, that flew by. I guess time flies really when you're having fun. That we probably have a lot more questions that we have answers right now. I think that is the reality. But that's exciting. That is very, very exciting. Many of you are probably in a similar field as we all are. And that is super exciting for yourselves, for your companies, for your coworkers, for the people that you influence and motivate, that we have a lot of exciting journeys and learnings ahead. So take advantage of it. Be innovative. Ask questions.
Dan.
Those are two tough acts to follow, I would say. In addition to what Mariah and Linda already spoke to, I think clearly the pace of change is only going to continue to accelerate. The fashion and apparel retail markets are going to continue to get more competitive, and there's going to increasingly be a harder place to compete. And I think brands and retailers that are able to win going forward are the ones that are going to drive the stronger emotional connection with their consumer. And it really is about, what does the logo stand for? And it gets back to the purpose, the values, but really consumers are buying your brand, the logo, not the shirt, because there's many other options out there for them. So it really is about what are your consumers going to remember about you and your brand, above and beyond the product.
Nice. And I will end up with the last message from myself. Create your own talents. If you are in the high management in any company in the world, dedicate 25% of your time to find talents. That's the only asset that you can find and will generate value for years, are the talents. So create your own talents. That's it, guys. Thank you very much, Linda, Mariah, Dan. It was wonderful to share this panel with you. And from EICOM, I thank you, all the audience, and we will come back soon with the second edition of the Future Proof Organizations. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.